If your mother or your brethren are worshipping a false idol, forgive me, I got an interruption. I had to stop the video and restart it. If your mother, so forgive me, let me recapture my train of thought. Start again slowly. If your brethren or your sisters are going off and worshipping other idols, technically, according to the law, you're supposed to be the first one to put them in a spiritual realm, in a manner of speaking. But obviously, although all things are lawful, they're not expedient in this particular time. In this particular time, we cannot do that. So, therefore, if your brethren or your sisters are worshipping idols, you're free to completely disassociate with them. Now, on the other hand, if your father or your mother is worshipping idols, you can't completely cut them off, because the scriptures say honor your mother and your father. But you can do your best to distance yourself from them and not follow after their idolatrous practices. A key example of that would be Abraham, when he departed from his father Terah, who was an idolater. But back to the point of this lesson, back to Genesis 4, because see, I wanted to keep this simple and look, we're going deep. Genesis, the 4th chapter, was talking about Cain murdering his brother. And it says, and he said, am I my brother's keeper? Verse 10, and he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto thee from the ground. Here's the point. Now thou art cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto Yahweh, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth. From thy face I shall be hid, and I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth. And it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. And Yahweh said unto him, therefore, whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken upon him sevenfold. And Yahweh set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Now that mark that was placed upon Cain was the mark of biblical leprosy, which is to have no melanin. And that same mark was upon Cain when he came back in the reincarnation as Esau, which was the son of Isaac, Isaac being the son of Abraham. So that the biblical lineage goes from Abraham to Isaac unto Jacob, because Jacob gained the birthright that Esau lost. You know, Esau was rejected. Cain, being able in the reincarnation, so forgive me, say it again. Jacob, being able in the reincarnation, was inherited to receive that blessing, which is the kingdom of heaven, which is what us Israelites are basically working towards. Now the Edomites, they're doing their best to prevent that prophecy from ever coming to pass, and they're trying to establish themselves as the rulers of this earth. Therefore, I have this picture on the screen, this image of the Sun newspaper, which is a popular newspaper here in the UK. And maybe a couple of weeks ago, they ran this article on the front page. And this is what you call the so-called, was it Princess Catherine or whatever, Kate Middleton, coming out of a car. And I thought it was quite symbolic, because it labelled her as the Red Queen, which is indeed what she is, because the Edomites, their blood shows forth through their skin. So although they masquerade and try to parade and call themselves white people, they're not white. As you can clearly see, the newspaper page, if I highlight that, that's white. The text is red. She is red. Her outfit is red. There's nothing on her that is white. She's cursed with biblical leprosy, and that's how they look. But they're trying to establish themselves as the so-called holy people, which they're not. And that's why their lies are being exposed and brought down in this time, because it's the time where Esau's had his rulership, and now it's time for him to go down. Now the same, you can look at these other people too, these other Edomites. As you can see, the text is white, their skin is red. You see all these Edomites here, and they've got, you know, thin yellow hair, which also is biblical leprosy. These are what would be called clean lepers according to the Bible, but lepers nonetheless, because leprosy was the mark that was set upon Cain, and it follows him and his descendants. Now another newspaper had the same headline here, as you can see, Red Queen. She's wearing red. Her skin has more closer in complexion to her handbag and her dress than it is the white of the page. So that's another fallacy that is taught. You know, you got white people and black people. Black people aren't black. You know, our skin is very dark brown. It's not black. I mean, for goodness sakes, man. I used to work as an artist, and you know, simple color theory is something that seems to escape the vast majority of people, unfortunately. Because if you was to go into an art class, right, 9 times out of 10, you know, when you go into art class, they'll present you with a white piece of paper or a white canvas for you to paint upon. Now, whenever I was working on a canvas with oil paints, the first thing I would do when working on a completely white canvas would be to get what you call a neutral grey. If you're working in, so it's like, I don't want to get too technical, but my mind's kind of flowing here. If you're working on Photoshop, each number has a value from 0 to 255, I believe. So if you want to go in the middle of 255, you divide it by 2, and that'll give you 128. Let me check that numerical value. It's 128, and I think it was 128. It's been a while since I did it. Bear with me a second. 128 divided times 2, actually. Yes, 256. So let me do it on the screen. Forgive me if it seems superfluous, but I'm in explanation mode. So when you're using Photoshop, right, the colors start from 0 to 255. 255 being the brightest, 0 being the darkest, right? So if you take 255, let's add 1 to make it 256, right? So we're going above 255 by 1. Divide that by 2, you get 128. So when I'm working in Photoshop, I would pick a hue of 128, and that would be a very neutral grey, and I will completely cover the whole canvas, which is usually white, with that grey, right? And likewise, when I was working with oil paints, I would mix a neutral grey of a similar value with oils, and I would paint the whole white canvas grey. Why would I do that, you might ask? Well, because it's easier to judge colours relative to a neutral position rather than a completely burnt out position. When I say completely burnt out, because 255 would be the most brilliant, purest white. So if you're starting with a canvas and everything is a brilliant white, everything is kind of more difficult to judge hues correctly, because you're working from a very extreme position. Now, white's at one end of the spectrum and black is at the other. So if you go on Photoshop and you take the hue value down to 0, you get black, which basically means 0, an absence of light. Because really, when you look at objects in the world, so lucky, I don't want to get too deep, this is supposed to be a simple lesson, but bear with me, my mind's kind of racing. When you look at objects in the world with your natural eye, you're not actually seeing colour. You're actually seeing how your eye perceives reflections of light, basically. So when you look at colours, it's a spectrum, and the eye can pick up certain wavelengths on the colour spectrum, which is why, you know, the human perception, the perception of the human brain, be it the visual spectrum or the audible spectrum, for us humans is actually quite limited, which is why Apostle Paul said, I have not seen, let me get this one, bear with me. Let me not roughly paraphrase it. Because the mind of the Most High, it will blow your mind. There we go. 1 Corinthians 2 and 9. This precept should hopefully make sense. Forgive me, my mind's racing. It's not I'm not at my best. 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 9. This actually makes sense, actually, with what I'm saying. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9, it says, "But as it is written, I have not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which the Most High God have prepared for them that love him." Right? It says, "I have not seen." So basically, your eye hasn't perceived. Like, you can only perceive the basic colours that the human eye can perceive right now. But that doesn't mean that there's not more out there. It's just that the human perception is actually very small. Like, as I say, the visual spectrum which the naked eye can see is very small. You've got wavelengths such as infrared. You know, you need special equipment to be able to pick up those wavelengths, but your natural eye can't see it. Likewise, with the audible spectrum, your human ear can only perceive a very limited range of the potential audio spectrum that's out there. I'll use an example of dog whistles. There's these particular types of whistles which people can get, and they can blow them, but your human ear won't hear it. But a dog's ear, which has a wider audible spectrum to it, can perceive those wavelengths, and it will respond to the silent whistle. So you're there thinking someone's just doing nothing, just blowing air into nothing, but really they're blowing air into a device which converts the air pressure into harmonic frequency that is outside the range of the audible spectrum of the human ear. So I'll read this again. 1 Corinthians 2 and 9, it says, "But as it is written, I have not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which the Most High God have prepared for them that love him." Likewise, the appearance of angels and demons. You know, they operate on a spectrum which usually is outside the range of the visual spectrum. But does that mean that they're not there? Well, according to Esau's public fool system, they teach you hubris, essentially. They teach you pride. Pride as in, oh, well, if I can't see it, it's not there. And that's complete bullshit. You know, the unseen things are more powerful than the things that are seen. Good example. You can't see the air, can you? But you breathe it every day. You can't see the wind, can you? But you feel it when there's a storm. You know, so you can't see the angels that hold back the tides of the sea. Like, you know, when you're at the beach and the sea crashes against the shore of the sand, that, you know, there are angels whose job it is to keep that in order, so that the water doesn't transgress the boundaries appointed. However, when there's a tsunami, the angels are allowed to let forth that restraint, and therefore a tidal wave comes and it crashes on the land and people die. And that's a judgment from the Lord. But they only do that when the Most High gives the commandment. Again, we can't see the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, but through faith we know him to be real. And, you know, when you're a spiritual person, you'll look at everything with a spiritual eye. And to me, it seems like, you know, people of the world would laugh at me and say, "Oh, you're into that Bible stuff. It's just fairy tales." But to me, this is more true than anything. And the people who don't believe in the Bible, they're the ones who are believing in fairy tales, because they're deceived by their own vain opinion. And that's the most dangerous thing in this life. And it's very easy, you know, because pride is ingrained in the human flesh. You know, pride is ingrained in the human flesh. It's part of the nature of the condition of sin. So therefore, when Satan will try to tempt you, he will try to appeal to a person's own pride and their own vanity. You know, it's very easy to trust in yourself. It's more difficult to put your faith in a higher power that nobody can ever prove, you know. But the proof is in the faith, really. You know, the scriptures say without faith it's impossible to please him. Anyway, I've kind of gone on a side tangent. Lord willing, that was edifying. But back to the point of what I was saying about black and white. These Edomites teach that, you know, black people are black. Going back to what I was saying about painting. When usually I start a painting, I'll knock the value of the atmosphere down to a neutral, which, as I said, would be a 128 grey if I'm using Photoshop, or if I'm using oils in real life, I'll mix a natural grey, you know, white and black equals grey, mix a neutral one and cover the whole canvas with it. And then from that point, I'll proceed to paint, because it's easier to judge distances in a neutral environment rather than an extreme one. And when I say distances, that would be hues, because hues have distances on the visual spectrum, i.e. green is next to blue. You know, yellow would be 2 steps away from blue. Orange would be 3 steps away from blue. Red would be 4 steps away from blue. Talking about intervals, because the way the visual spectrum works is very similar to the way the audio spectrum works. As in, if you're measuring sound, sound is measured in intervals. You know, you can have semitones and you can have tones. You know, so distances, a semi meaning half. If you go from the note C to C sharp in music, that would be an interval of a semitone. If you go from C to D, that would be a whole tone. And then if you was to go to C, that would be another whole tone. Whereas if you wanted to go a half step from D, let me say that again. If you go from C to C sharp, it's a semitone. C to D is a tone. C to E would be 2 whole tones. But if you was to go to C to D sharp or E flat, that would be a tone and a half. So everything's measured in intervals, just like with numbers, you know. Numbers working in sequences. You can have, let's say the sequence from 1 to 10, you know, 2 is next to 1. You know, 2 steps from 1 would be 3. 3 steps away from 1 would be 4. So things are all measured in distances. So you can measure distances visually, you can measure distances audibly, you can measure distances numerically, you can measure distances in real life with, you know, a ruler or, you know, a yardstick or however what you're measuring in, you know, kilometers, meters, whatever. There's distances. So I've said a lot. Hopefully it's not too confusing, but to get to the point, Esau used the term black to call so-called Israelites because that was part of taking Israel's name out of remembrance. And that is also part of the curses that would be called proverbs and bywords. Now, the bywords that Esau has associated with Jake, being Israelites, are all predominantly negative. Hence why the term black is often used to describe Israelite people, because the term black carries with it many negative connotations. As I said, when you're measuring distances in color, if you talk about black, black is absolute zero. It means nothing on the color spectrum. It means the complete absence of light. Whereas Esau, on the other hand, try to masquerade and present themselves as the children of light, because white represents purity according to the scriptures, but also white in color value is the hottest temperature in terms of measuring color. That's why it's at 255. If you look on Photoshop, it's at 255. It's got the most luminescence to it. You know, you could talk about luminescence, brilliance. That's what white is. So when you think about it now, when I've broken it down in that manner, you can see that Esau is trying to say, we are everything, we're all encompassing, we're pure, we're righteous, we're holy, we are the chosen people. And those so-called black people, they are nothing. You know, they're dirty, they're dark, they're void of light, you know, they're negative, you know, morally reprehensible. All these connotations come from the association of that term black, you know. But again, it goes back to the curses of us being under proverbs and bywords. You know, that's why usually black, everything that black's associated with, it has a negative connotation, i.e. being blackmailed, being blackballed, being blacklisted. You know, all these things carry negative connotations. So Esau has foisted that whole negativity onto a group of people, and the other nations see this, and the other nations start to believe in it. Hence why Jacob is considered nothing in this world. You know, you see a so-called black guy, people tend to look down on him, you know, and even among your own people, they will look down on you. So your own people will treat you as less than human, as a subhuman, whereas they'd never ever consider doing that to an Edomite, because they know if they did, there would be repercussions. But Jacob's eye is evil towards his own brothers, and that's again part of the curses. But just to tie this up, because I've been talking a bit more than I thought I would, the Spirit had me going in on that. Going to Genesis the 25th chapter to prove my point about Esau being leprous. 19. This is the genesis of Jacob and Esau, right? And these are the generations of Isaac, who was Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padanaram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated Yahweh for his wife, because she was barren, and Yahweh was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. So being barren, meaning that she couldn't conceive. So what they did is they went to a prophet to inquire what the problem was, and this is what was happened. Rebekah then conceived, but it went deeper. It says, and the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? Meaning that the children were fighting in the womb. And she went to inquire of Yahweh, meaning she went to see a prophet. And the prophet, so it says, and Yahweh said unto her, through the mouth of the prophet, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So 2 nations were in her womb, 2 manner of people. The first one to come out would be the weaker, and the second one would be the stronger, and the elder will end up serving the younger. And when the days to be delivered were fulfilled, there were twins in her womb, and the first came out red all over, like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau, which in the Hebrew would be Isashua, which means wasted away is he. Why was he called Isashua or Esau? Because his melanin was stripped. He came out looking like one that was half dead, because it came out without no melanin. And that goes back to the curse of Cain coming back on Esau when he came back to the planet on the earth in the reincarnation. And it says, and after came out his brother, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. Now why was nothing mentioned about Jacob's complexion? The reason is because he came out melanated, which was the normal way for people to look when they came out of the womb in those days. And it says, and he took hold of Esau's heel, which was symbolic of Jacob eventually pulling Esau out of power, which is what's happening through the Spirit right now as I'm doing this lesson, and many other brothers are doing these lessons. Bringing out this truth is destroying Esau's empire. So going back to this image, this is all fallacy, this is all false. Going back to the example I used of if we was to go through basic colour theory in the art setting, I'm going to put forth the hypothesis that you were going to draw a picture, right? Or paint a picture, I should say. Now, you don't have to be an expert artist to follow along with what I'm saying. Just use your imagination. Let's say you're there and you've got your paints, right? And you're told to paint this picture of Kate Middleton along with the background, right? Just paint what you can see on the screen. Would you take a tube of paint, which was brilliant white, to depict her skin? No, you wouldn't, because if you did, she wouldn't be visible against the background of the paper, which is indeed brilliant white. Likewise, let's flip the script. If there was a so-called brown person here, a so-called black person, I should say, with brown skin, would you pick the colour black to depict that person's skin? No, you wouldn't. Otherwise, there would be no contrast between the black of this text here and the person's skin. So this is all part of Esau's lies. What I'm saying, I hope it doesn't sound too convoluted, but Esau has lied so much to the point that he's got people bugged out on this earth. People don't understand basic colour theory. People don't understand basic concepts of, light, sound, space, form, texture. You can't say someone with brown skin is a black person because those aren't the same colours. Likewise, you can't say a white person has white skin when their skin clearly is red, because their blood shows forth through their skin. And also that term red in the scriptures is synonymous with the colour of sin. And also Esau's nationality is the nation of Edom, which also means red. So, you know what I mean? The Bible destroys the mythology that has saturated the minds of the people of this world. You know, I don't want to sound arrogant in saying this, but the truth of the matter is that if someone doesn't have a knowledge of the Holy Scriptures and biblical truth, then they really have no knowledge at all. All they have is vain opinions. I'll say that again. Someone who has no knowledge of the Holy Scriptures, they have no knowledge at all. All they have are vain opinions. And Proverbs 3 in the 5th verse says this: for many are deceived by their own vain opinion. Proverbs 3 in the 5th verse says that. It says, trust in the Lord Yahweh with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. And that's what a lot of people in this world do. They lean upon their own understanding, thinking themselves to be of some substance or of some worth, when in reality couldn't be further from the truth. You know, what shall stand is the word and will and truth of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. Man's wisdom is folly in the sight of Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, but that wisdom is promoted in this world, because this world folly is set in great dignity. So this was supposed to be a simple one. It went a little bit deeper than I thought, but basically that's who the Edomites are. The so-called white people on the face of the earth predominantly, and they're the ones who have sown all these lies and proliferated all these lies through their public school systems, through their education, through the television, through the media. Every time you hear anything coming from mainstream media or on the TV, it's all lies. That's why it's so important to gain an understanding of the Holy Scriptures, and then to filter everything you see and hear through that lens. And then the world will start to make sense. And then you'll feel very sad because, as the scriptures say, with much learning comes great sorrow, because then you start to understand the truth of your estate and the fucked up situation we're in, and how desperately we need Yahushua to deliver us from this place of misery and bestow upon us the salvation that was promised unto the elect of the nation of Israel. I'm going to end it there. So with that, shalom. I'll catch you on the next one, Lord willing, shalom.